Shanti's back. Hare Krishna. How simply are we going to play today? How simply are we going to play today? Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Purnamansa Pariprajaka Ashto Tarasatashi Śrimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath Shyam Mukund Radha Kunigiri Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Navadip Dham ki jai. Jagannath Puri ki jai. Ganga Mai ki jai. Jamana Mai ki jai. Tulsi Devi ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bol. Śrimad Bhāgavatam 3:23-10. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Devahuti Ruvacha Radham Bhata Dvija Vishaitad Amogha Yoga Mayadhipe Twayi Vibho Tad Avaimi Partaha Yaste Abhyatahi Samayaha Sakra Sakrid Angasango Puyad Gadiyasi Gunaha Prasavaha Satinam. Devahuti Ruvacha Radham Bata Dvija Vrishaita Damogha Yoga Radham Bata Dvija Vrishaita Damogha Yoga Mayadhipe Twayi Vibho Tadavaimi Bhartaha Yaste Byadhahi Samaya Sakridanga Sango Puyad Guriyasi Guna Prasava Satinam. I'm chanting deliberately slow. Radham Bata Dvija Vrishaita Damogha Yoga Mayadhipe Twayi Vibho Tadavaimi Partaha Yaste Byadhayi Samaya Sakridanga Sango Puyad Gadiyasi Guna Prasava Satinam. Devahuti Ruvacha Radham Bata Dvija Vrishaita Damogha Yoga Mayadhipe Twayi Vibho Tadavaimi Bhartaha Yaste Byadhayi Samaya Sakridanga Sango Puyad Bhuyad Gadiyasi Guna Prasava Satinam Tebahuti Ruvacha Radhambata Dvijavrishaita Damogha Yoga Mayadhipe Tvai Vibho Tadavaimi Partha Yaste Vyadhayi Samaya Sakridanga Sango Bhuyad Guriya Siguna Prasava Satinam Devahuti Ruvacha Radhambata Dvija Vrishaita Damogha Yoga Ayadhipe Tvai Vibho Tadavaimi Partha Yaste Vyadhayi Samaya Sakridanga Sango Bhuyad Gadiya Siguna Prasava Satinam. Ladies. Vihuti Ruvacha Radhambata Dvijavrishaita Damoga Yoga Mayadhipe Tvai Vibho Tadavaimi Partha Yaste Vyadayi Samaya Sakridanga Sango Bhuyad Gadiya Siguna Prasava Satinam Devahuti Ruvacha Radhambata Dvijavrishaita Damoga Yoga Mayadhipe Tvai Vibho Tadavaimi Partha Yaste Vyadayi Samaya Sakridanga Sango Bhuyad Gadiya Siguna Prasava Satinam Devahutihi Uvacha. Devahuti said, Radham, it has been achieved. Bhatta, indeed. Dvijavrisha, O best of the Brahmins. Etat, this. Amogha, infallible. Yogamaya, of mystic powers. Adhipe, the master. Tvai, in you. Vibho, O great one. Tat, that. Avaimi, I know. Partha, O husband. Yaha, that which. Te, by you. Abhyadhayi, was given. Samayaha, promise. Sakrit, once. Angasangaha, bodily union. Bhuyat, may be. Goriyasi, when very glorious. Gunaha, a great quality. Prasavaha, progeny. Satinam, of chaste women. Sri Devahuti said, My dear husband, O best of Brahmanas, I know that you have achieved perfection and are the master of all the infallible mystic powers, because you are under the protection of Yogamaya, the transcendental nature. But you once made a promise that our bodily union should now fulfill, since children are a great quality for a chaste woman who has a glorious husband. Purport. Devahuti expressed her happiness by uttering the word bhata, for she knew that her husband was in a highly elevated transcendental position and was under the shelter of Yogamaya. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, those who are great souls, Mahatmas, are not under the control of the material energy. The Supreme Lord has two energies, material and spiritual. The living entities are marginal energy. As marginal energy, a person may be under the control of the material energy or the spiritual energy, Yogamaya. Karda Muni was a great soul, and therefore he was under the spiritual energy, which means that he was directly connected with the Supreme Lord. The symptom of this is Krishna consciousness, constant engagement in devotional service. This was known to Devahuti, yet she was anxious to have a son by bodily union with the sage. She reminded her husband of his promise to her parents, "I will remain only until the time of Devahuti's pregnancy." She reminded him that for a chaste woman to have a child by a great personality is most glorious. She wanted to be pregnant, and she prayed for that. The word stri means expansion. By bodily union of the husband and wife, their qualities are expanded. Children born of good parents are expansions of the parents' personal qualifications. Both Karda Muni and Devahuti were spiritually enlightened. Therefore, she desired from the beginning that first she be pregnant, and then she be empowered with the achievement of God's grace and love of God. For a woman, it is a great ambition to have a son of the same quality as a highly qualified husband. Since she had the opportunity to have Karda Muni as her husband, she also desired to have a child by bodily union. Om Jnana Timirantasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kodamahyam Tadhati Shapadantikam Bandehang Shri Guru Shri Jatapadakamalang Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Shagrashatam Shahagana Raganatan Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Shahagana Lolita Sri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Koruna Sindho Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prashabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hori Priye Vansha Kolpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhobhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Shadi Gaur Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Devahuti Ruvacha Radham Batadvija Vishaita Damoga Yoga Mayadhipe Tvai Vibho Tadavaimi Partha Yaste Bhyadhayi Samaya Sakridanga Sango Puyad Guriya Siguna Prasava Satinam. The Devahuti is expressing to Kardamuni her desire to have a child. That means sex. In the Vedic context, sex is not a disconnected recreational activity with no purpose other than to gratify the senses. That kind of sex is contrary to religious principles. In the Bhagavad Gita, Dharma viruddha bhuteshu kamosmi bharatarshava. The Lord says that I'm sex that's not contrary to religious principles. Srila Sridhar Swami explains what Dharma avirudh means in this context. He says it means sex with one's spouse at the appropriate time for having a child. Matra, I think that's the word used, only. Matra means only. Lava matra sadhu sangha sarvasiddhyo. Only by a moment's association with a devotee one attains perfection. So matra, only for the purpose of having a child. That's Dharma Abhirud. Srila Baladev Vijabhushan, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his comments on the verse says exactly the same thing. And Srila Baladev Vijabhushan in his commentary on the verse says exactly the same thing. And Srila Prabhupada in his commentary on the verse says exactly the same thing. So according to our acharyas, this is the sex life that represents Krishna. Dharma Abhirud. Sex for the purpose of having a good child. That kind of sex is in line with religious principles. And any other kind of sex is out of line with religious principles or contrary to religious principles, Dharma Virud. So, as a chaste wife, Devahuti prays to her husband that she wants to have a good child. Good child means that the husband is glorious and the child, therefore, should be of equal status to with the husband. Therefore, this business of begetting children was done so carefully. First of all, the marriage was considered in terms of the qualities of the prospective husband and wife. And then they would live according to religious principles, and they would have children according to religious principles. According to Manu Samhita, there's the Garbhadan Sanskar, for purifying the consciousness of the parents, because the consciousness of the parents affects the child conceived. Even now in the modern context, the mother is a drug addict and the child is born with heroin dependency. And it was predicted by Shamik Rishi. He was scolding his son, "You've done the wrong thing," cursing the king. Now everything will deteriorate and people will have sex like cats and dogs. And that's actually happening. The cats and dogs have sex just according to sense gratification. And the human beings also, so-called human beings, Prabhupada would say, want to have sex just for sense gratification. Not only without any purpose, but they want to block nature's arrangement so that we can have sex and not have children. So Prabhupada said that this was sinful. He wasn't ambiguous about it. Well, is contraception okay? Well, it's not quite clear. We don't really know. It's maybe time, place, and circumstance. No, he was very clear about it. That contraceptive methods are contrary to religious principles. So the whole idea of sex life is to serve Krishna by having Krishna-conscious children or high-quality children. So the Garbhadan Samskar was performed. Prabhupada said, now forget it, Garbhadan Samskar. First he said that without the Garbhadan Samskar, all the so-called Brahmins and so on who were born, they're all Shudras. But when one of my godbrothers, Madhusudan Prabhu, asked Prabhupada about performing Garbhadan Samskar, Prabhupada said there was no question of Garbhadan Samskar, because if you go by Manu Samhita, he said you're all mlechas. There's no question of Garbhadan Samskar. Garbhadan Samskar means Vedic principles, Vedic rituals. And you're not meant for that. So Prabhupada said the parents should chant 50 rounds, then the child should be conceived. Pancharatriki, we're not following the Vedic rules and regulations. We're following the regulations given by the Pancharatra, Nard Pancharatra, and so on, which are more suitable for the present day. So the Devahuti Radham Patad Vidravrasha, best of the Brahmins, Etad Amoga Yogamaya Adhipe. You are under the protection of Yogamaya. Mahatmanas tu mam partha daivim prakritim ashrita. Bhajantyananya manaso gyatva bhutadim aviyam, in the Bhagavad Gita. The great souls are always engaged in devotional service, and therefore they're always under the protection of Yogamaya, the spiritual energy of the Lord. Here Yogamaya is given as mystic powers. one becomes powerful by the grace of the most powerful, the personality of Godhead. So Vibho, you're powerful. Avaimi, I know that. So you gave a promise at the time of our marriage that you would stay with me until the time that a son was conceived, a child was conceived. So that means that the child has to be there. So let us have that child. And it will be glorious. A similar proposal was made earlier in this canto by Diti to Kashyapa, that I so much want a son, and it'll be glorious. But it wasn't glorious, because her husband informed her that this is not the suitable time, and you just wait. But she was insistent, and he was weak, and so they had sex at an inauspicious time and an inauspicious consciousness, and therefore they had children on the level of Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. But here, Devahuti is sati, a chaste woman, genuinely, and Kashyap Muni is highly advanced in Krishna consciousness. So their child will be glorious, and that we'll find as the narration unfolds. All right, why don't I stop here and see what kind of questions there might be, or comments. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I was thinking about this point of good children coming from good
parents. Could you speak without the microphone? I can't understand a word you're saying with that microphone. Could you just put the microphone aside and speak loud?
Okay, well, in the online audience.
The online audience, okay, then somebody can repeat what you say, because I can't understand it at all.
Can you hear like this? Is it better now?
Yeah.
Okay. So Maharaj, this verse was talking about good parents begetting good children.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was thinking about how it seems that that's not always the case. You know, we see in the case of Srila Prabhupada and, Jayadvaita Acharya, that half of his children became Mayavadi. So what happens in those cases where it seems like...
Yeah, we have instances where the parents were of high quality, but somehow the children were not as expected. Or the opposite, Hiranyakashipu begets Prahlad Maharaj. Therefore, it's not a sure thing. The material world, nothing is sure. Daivam chaivatra panchamam. Adhishtanam tata karta. Karanam chad pratak vidha. Vividas cha pratak cheshta. Daivam chaivatra panchamam. In the accomplishment of anything, there are 5 factors. The place, the doer, the senses, the endeavor, and finally, the destiny or the hand of the personality of Godhead. That's the ultimate factor. So, therefore, it's not, we can only play our part, but we can't guarantee the outcome. Just sometimes you have a good business plan, you have a great business partners, you've got sufficient capital, you've got good engineers behind your product, everything's lined up and the thing fails. It should have succeeded admirably, and instead, despite everything, fails. Bhāgavatam gives the example, you have a child who's has loving, attentive parents, and somehow he dies. Or a child who is practically abandoned and he lives. Or a patient with no really qualified doctor, and not that serious a disease, but he dies. And the patient, rather a serious disease and no doctor, and he survives. And a great doctor and a light disease, and he perishes. So finally, we can't control the outcome. You can't control the outcome. This is and this is something I've noted in householder life, that we get married and have children and we have our expectations. It's going to be this and this and this and this, and sometimes it's just not at all what we bargained for. It's not at all what we bargained for. It can be just exactly the opposite of what we dreamed of. Or anything in the material world is going to be like that. It's something like a dice game. We don't know what the outcome, you throw the dice, but you don't know what numbers are going to come up. So it's not pure chance. There's the personality of Godhead behind everything. But in terms of our being able to control the outcome, no, we can't. So we make our plans for happiness, we nail it all down, and we've got all our ideas lined up. It's going to be like this and this and this. Tick, 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 tick. We've ticked all the boxes. And then it's a disaster. There's no guarantee. Or it's, it was a shaky looking start, but came out all right. It's not up to us. We just have to, what is that? Karman ye vadikaras te mapalesha vidachana. That's not what I was thinking. There's another verse that you can. Basically, we have to act without considering the results. We just have to act according to our duty, knowing that the results are not guaranteed. Yes.
So, Maharaj, you were mentioning that we're not.
You want to hold it closer for the online?
Yeah, they can hear it. We're not qualified for Vedic rituals, but Pancharatrika Vidi. But would there be a time that, so say they chant 50 rounds, have children, those children have children and gets purified. Will there be a time when it crosses over to perhaps the children switch to Vedic rituals, or, something like that where it gets more purified? What do you think about that?
They're pure means they'll follow the Pancharatrika principles very nicely. Nor do we want to go back to the Vedic principles. Our goal is not, we have to get closer to the Vedas, like the Arya Samaj, that's their idea. We're not trying for that. Our goal is, the essence of the Vedas is Krishna. Vedaischa sarvairaham meva vedya. We want Krishna consciousness, not greater conformance to the Vedic principles. So for this age, Pancharatra is recommended. So those who are purified, those who are born of good parents and Krishna conscious upbringing and so on, they can follow the principles nicely. That's what we expect. Not that somehow we have to get back to the Vedas. No, we have to get back to Godhead. Something else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thanks for the nice class. I was wondering when you mentioned about Kashyapa Muni and his wife and how like it was an inauspicious time, but Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu were born, and that facilitated like Prahlad's birth. How does that really? Is that just because Krishna wanted it to be so, or?
Diti and Kashyap had sex at an inauspicious time. That resulted in the birth of Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, but that led to the appearance of Prahlad. So how does that all pan out?
Yeah, I guess I don't know how to ask my question so precisely, but yeah, like how do things like that happen?
They happen by the will of God.
It's just that simple.
Yeah, Hiranyakashipu certainly wasn't looking to have a Vaishnav son, nor was Diti expecting to have demonic offspring. But according to, of course, there was in the case of Diti and Kashyap, there was an immediately traceable connection between the inauspicious time and the quality of the sons. But even there, it was a divine arrangement. Krishna had something in mind. Similarly, Prahlad, Krishna had something in mind, that this child born of a demon father should be a pure devotee. So by Krishna's arrangement, by the blessings of Narada, this happened. Yes.
Thank you, Maharaj. I was thinking, like in the case of Kardama Muni, we see he went through a serious...
Listen carefully so that you can repeat what he says.
He went through a serious austerity to prepare himself. And we know that generally, like in our life also, whatever we want to become, like family people or continue as a brahmacharis, we should get a good training. But then sometimes it happens, devotees, they join like when they are in their 20s, 25, 30s sometime. And then they think practically there is no time for training. We just have to go for it because life is ahead.
Well, it's true that they don't have time for 25 years of brahmachari training. That's now out of the picture. So they should get some training in Krishna consciousness. Now we've come, we should get some understanding. And very quickly one can pick up what is Krishna consciousness, understand the basic philosophy, chant Hare Krishna, purify the heart, engage in devotional service. So that much they should learn. If they're going to be householders, they should learn what the regulative principles are that we're expected to follow. They should learn this idea that sex should be purposeful for the purpose of having good children. That training at least they should get. And then you have to make the best. Sometimes a person's not educated, but he does very well in his profession. And sometimes even the best educated person doesn't do very well. So we have to make the best use of a bad bargain, Prabhupada often said. It means we have to work with what we've got. If we can join at 5, Komara Atre Pragya Dharman Bhagavataniha, that's the best. But if we join at 20, 25, 65, whenever we join, then we should take it up seriously and work with what we have. And still tepi yanti param gatim. one can go back to Godhead. Pandava, you were there.
Maharaj, why is always this emphasis on having son? Why not just having child? What's so special of having a son? Exactly. Some people use this, they say, well, therefore in India, still people are killing the child in the womb if they find out it's not a son, it's a daughter. So they use this as an argument.
Yeah. The son is considered, what shall we say, superior, better, for various reasons. Of course, from a practical point of view in Indian culture, the boy gets married and he carries on. The girl gets married. Now you have to pay for the marriage, dowry, so big expense. So just that in itself is a deterrent. Also, the men are considered stronger. The man can take care of himself. The daughter you have to take care of. And then so much trouble to get the daughter married. We see practically so much difficulty. Son, he may get married or not married. Generally, they want the son married also, and they go through so much trouble. But the daughter, it's a must. It's the duty of the father. He must get the daughter married. So it's a big weight on his head. A big weight on his head. Yes. As the father lives on through the son, it's said. So the son will be fully independently capable. The woman will be, the daughter will be dependent. So for these and other reasons, the Vedic culture is what shall we say, biased toward male offspring.
So in this topic of, you're mentioning that famous Bhagavad Gita verse where Krishna says, I am sex life, which is not contrary to religious principles. And when this discussion comes up, sometimes people relate. There was one disciple of Prabhupada who was going to see a prostitute, but he had a wife, and then so Prabhupada was questioning, well, you have a wife, why did you go to see a prostitute? So I don't know if you could maybe comment on that.
Yeah. I heard the story confirmed, actually. It's been floating on the internet, and I heard it confirmed by a reliable source. That why is he going to a prostitute? He has his wife. That means that sex between husband and wife is legal. So why go to a prostitute for illicit sex? Sometimes Prabhupada would say, they're paying money to go to a club to see a naked woman. They can see the same thing at home. So, where's the sense of it? There's a story in Bhāgavatam about a man who he had a very faithful wife, and he became attached to a prostitute, a real, what should we say, top tier prostitute. And his wife saw that the husband's not very happy, so she inquired, I'm doing everything to try to make you happy. Why are you, seems you're not dissatisfied. No, I'm after that prostitute. So the sort of shortening the story, the wife arranged that the husband could visit that prostitute. And when he went there, first they didn't like go right to it. First, she served him a meal. So the prostitute did. But everything was served in two containers, or two plates or two bowls, one iron and one gold. Same preparations, but there'd be like one sabji on a gold plate and the same sabji on an iron plate. So he said, why? Why is it like this? He said, no, first you try it and then tell me how you like it. So he took the sabji from the gold plate. How do you like it? It was very nice. And then from the iron plate, yes, also equally nice. So in that way, so why is everything in two portions in this way? She said, it's because you're such a rascal. That the same thing that you're coming to me for, you can get from your wife, but you're such a rascal that you're coming to me. It's the same thing, same business. But you're thinking, you're imagining that because you're coming to me and I'm a high-class courtesan, you're going to get something different. No, same business. So, that incident is quoted popularly to make the argument that Prabhupada approved of sex for whatever purpose, provided it was within marriage. I think that's right, that's why we see it. That's the usual context. The argument is made that Prabhupada actually set not just one standard, but multiple standards for proper conduct, and that this was one of them, that just whatever you do, as long as it's with your wife, that's okay. That argument suffers from several problems. One is that Prabhupada never personally drew that conclusion. He never taught, well, here's tier one, here's standard 1, here's standard 2, here's standard 3. Like Krishna, he says, if you can't do this, do this. If you can't do this, do that. Prabhupada never explicitly said that, so we have to sort of tease it out from anecdotes and what have you to try to make that point. That's the first problem. The second problem is that Prabhupada was quite emphatic in several recorded conversations and in Bhāgavatam purports in saying that sex outside of this purpose of begetting a child is irreligious. It's contrary to Dharma. So to try to make the argument that it's not contrary to Dharma, when Prabhupada explicitly said it was, may be difficult, it may be quite a stretch. That's the second point. Let me see if there's a third point there. Yeah, the third point is there's sort of an unspoken, when the advocacy is made for sex within marriage, as long as it's within marriage, sex is okay. It doesn't have to be for begetting children. As long as it's within marriage, then it's not contrary to religious principles. That's the argument that's being made. But there's also a hidden argument that goes along with it. And the hidden argument is that contraception is also okay. Because we want to have sex, and it's very clear that we don't want to have children. And what are you going to do? Just throw the dice and hope that your number doesn't come up, as it were. People aren't going to do that. Even apart from the logic of it, well, I won't get into that. But when the argument is made that, well, as long as it's within householder life, sex for any purpose is okay, the understanding is that sort of riding along on that car is going to be this second principle, that contraception is also accepted. And Srila Prabhupada was very clear that it's not, that it's, he outright said, sinful. So the best argument you could make, if you wanted to tease out an argument from that anecdote, is that sex for any purpose with your wife is okay as long as you don't use contraceptives. That would be the best possible argument, a best possible conclusion that you might tease out of the story. And I think that's not enough for most people. They want more. Or for most people who make the argument. If I want to make that argument to justify essentially what I'm doing, what am I doing? Just sex, not within marriage and not for children, or sex not for marriage, within marriage, not for children, and with contraceptives. If that's what I want to make the argument for, it's going to be hard from anything that Prabhupada taught.
Hare Krishna. So obviously the ideal standard is just sex for procreation, but allowances seem to be made in the Śrimad Bhāgavatam for people who can't follow that standard. Therefore you have the story of Yayati. So Yayati, you probably all know the story, but Yayati was very lusty. He had a lot of sex with his wife, and then at the end of the day, after thousands of years, whatever it was, he realized that he was still as lusty as he was at the beginning, so he decided to give it up, and he became a devotee. And of course, you know, his son was Yadu, and Krishna was born in the Yadu dynasty, so he wasn't like an abandoned soul. He still made progress. He was still, and then in the 11th canto, there's a verse of a very, I would say, an important verse, though Prabhupada never spoke it. But it goes something like this: Jata Shada Makatasu Nivana Savakameshu Veda Dukatmakan Kaman. Can't remember the last line, but it talks about how if somebody can't give up sense gratification, they shouldn't give up the process of Krishna consciousness. They should repent and sincerely feel sorry, but they should remain happy. I mean, I can find the verse.
Yeah, I've seen the verse.
You know the verse?
I don't know it by heart. But
Yeah, anyway, it's... So it seems that, you know, the highest standard is sex for procreation, but not everybody's going to be able to follow that. So therefore, allowances are made for people that can't follow that. So I think that, you know, if people get discouraged or give up because, you know, they can't follow that, I think that's sad.
So, sex and procreation is like the high standard, and it seems like people would get discouraged from that, not able to follow that. In the Bhāgavatam, there's a story of Yayati.
I heard that part.
Yeah, and that also that verse in the 11th canto So it seems like you shouldn't, what to do. There's the high standard that people can't follow, but they should still engage in devotional service.
Yeah. So this is the standard that Prabhupada taught. And it is a high standard for our in the present context. In other contexts, well, this is normal. But in our context, it's like, whoa, a high standard. But that's the standard. People may have trouble with that standard. They may have trouble with no intoxicants. They may have trouble with no meat eating, no meat, fish, or eggs. They may have trouble with no gambling. People may have trouble with any of our regulative principles. Those are our principles. Those are our principles. Maharaj Yayati, of course, he's not held up as an acharya. This is what you should do. Have sex and sex and sex and sex, so that one day you'll give it up. There is a verse in the Bhāgavatam where it talks about those who are not able to follow the principles of regulated life. And it says that basically they should just go at it. Basically, eat till you puke. That's paraphrasing what the verse says. I think it's 5th canto or someplace like that. Eat till you puke, just go at it, indulge your senses to the point where you become so disgusted that you say, okay, enough. But that pravriti marg is not what Prabhupada recommended for us. He's not recommending that at all. And Maharaj Yayati, and when Prabhupada tells the history in Bhāgavatam, he never says, well, here's something that you can do, or here's something you can try, or here's something you can emulate. It's never held out like that. The Bhāgavatam verse in the 11th canto certainly should be taken into account. If we can't follow the regulative principles strictly, still we should chant Hare Krishna. Still we should try to serve Krishna. That's for sure. And we have lots of people in our broader Hare Krishna movement who, they never got initiated because they couldn't follow the, one or another of the regulative principles. So they've carried on. They serve this way, they serve that way, they chant. So that encouragement should always be given, that even if you can't follow the regulative principles, even if you can't chant 16 rounds a day, even if you can't do this or do that, still be determined to be Krishna conscious. And Krishna will help you. Krishna will help you. Yes,
Can I read out the verse from the 11th?
Let me read it, because I won't hear it. I think I have a better microphone than you do. You just pass me the phone. I'll read it. And then you want to speak from it.
He wants to also hear himself. He doesn't think.
Yeah. Jata shradho matkatasu nirvina sarva karmasu veda dukatmakan kaman parityage pyanishwaraha tato bhajeta mam prita shraddhalur vriddha nishchayaha jushamanas chatan kaman duko darkam jagarhayan. 11, 20, 27, and 28. Having awakened faith in the narrations of my glories, being disgusted with all material activities, knowing that all sense gratification leads to misery, but still being unable to renounce all sense enjoyment, my devotees should remain happy and worship me with great faith and conviction. even though he's sometimes engaged in sense enjoyment. My devotee knows that all sense gratification leads to a miserable result, and he sincerely repents such activities. Prabhupada says the beginning stage of pure devotional service, not Prabhupada says, our Bhāgavatam commentators, the beginning stage of pure devotional service is described here by the Lord. A sincere devotee has practically seen that all material activities lead only to sense gratification, and all sense gratification leads only to misery. Thus, a devotee's sincere desire is to engage 24 hours a day in the loving service of Lord Krishna without personal motivation. I'm skipping a bit. The word anishra indicates that because of one's past sinful activities and bad habits, one may not immediately be able to completely extinguish the enjoying spirit. The Lord here encourages such a devotee not to be overly depressed or morose, but to remain enthusiastic and to go on with his loving service. So the devotee, sometimes he knows that this is bad, but he can't help himself. Thus he thinks, by my previous shameful life, my heart is polluted with many illusory attachments. Personally, I have no power to stop them. Only Lord Krishna within my heart can remove such inauspicious contamination. But whether the Lord removes such attachments immediately or lets me go on being afflicted by them, I will never give up my devotional service to him. Did you want to add something? Just, okay. Putting on record what the verse says. I'm going to stop because I have a big sign in front of me that says stop at 9. So, your phone. Thank you. All right. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna.